Hey, I'm Videobob. I've got some pretty cool cars, but today we're going to talk about my new 2019 Maserati Levante Gran Lusso Edition. Most of what you've heard about Maserati is probably wrong, and almost all of the reviews that I've seen people do on this car were completely just wrong. A lot of people just don't know what they're talking about. They're just running their mouth. They didn't really own the car, they just drove it around for a day or two. And I want to try to explain to you why this is a great car and why I think you should buy one. Stay tuned. A lot of automotive journalists and car YouTubers are just master clickbaiters. That's right, I said it, they're masturbators. And for some reason, they just love pooping all over the Maserati. I mean, at the same time, you'll watch Top Gear and they'll talk about what a great car it is and how it handles, and these people will drive the cars and then they'll talk about how great it is, and then they'll turn around and also poop all over it. And it's those reviews that have given Maserati a bad reputation. Maserati didn't give itself a bad reputation, but what happened is there's a lot of people out there that don't know what it is to own a luxury or a sports car. See, because Maserati builds these cars like this that kind of look like an almost everyday kind of car, but underneath its skin is something really special. So when you look at the Levante, the Grecale, the Ghibli, the Quattroporte, they're not as exotic as some of the Ferraris and the Lamborghinis that you've seen. And they do require a little maintenance here and there. But really, they're pretty good cars. And listen, I've owned some crazy cars. If you watch the other videos on my channel, you know that I have multiple Rolls-Royce cars and other exotic cars. I'm not bragging, I'm just saying that I've had experience with a lot of cars that people say are troublesome, when really they're not that bad. So I've watched a bunch of reviews about this car because I was interested in it. But what I cared about was the other people that I know that have owned these cars that said how great they were. I joined Maserati Levante groups and saw that people had 200, 300,000 miles on their Levantes. Never had any trouble out of the engines or the ZF transmissions or the transaxles. The only complaints I heard were things like, oh, the Brembo brakes sometimes are squeaky. Or I had a little problem with the radio. It's a parts bin car. No, it isn't. Like every car in the world has like 10 millimeter and 13 millimeter bolts. I guess they're all parts bin cars. So we're going to get into that rant, and I'm going to talk about why they are wrong about the Levante and why I think Maserati is going to become a little bit more of a name brand. Okay, you see that truck behind me over there? That is my Ram 3500. That's made by a company called Stellantis. Stellantis owns Ram, Dodge, Chrysler, Alfa Romeo, and also Maserati. So you'll hear people say, oh, the Maserati is a parts bin car because it has the same window switches as that Ram truck. It's got the same turn signal. It's got a Uconnect screen. I'm going to explain to you why that's really the greatest decision that Maserati ever made. And by the way, it's not that Maserati has Ram window switches. Maybe my Ram has Maserati window switches. You see, Stellantis is this larger company that owns all of those brands, and they smartly figured out there are certain things about certain cars that are sometimes a failure point, and that's where they made corrections. One of the things you'll hear owners of earlier Maseratis talk about is they had sticky buttons, or the way the buttons were arranged were in a poor layout, or maybe they had some electrical issues with the stereo or the infotainment. That's all been solved. I'm completely happy with the fact that I can get the same turns, the same turn signal for a few dollars. I can get the window switches, which are never going to fail. But if they did, they'd cost like 20, 30 bucks because they are the same ones that's in that truck. And by the way, that's like a $100,000 truck. Okay, that truck costs more than this car, and it's fantastic. So if you're going to judge this car off of those three things, the turn signal, the window switches, and the screen that they used for the infotainment, you really don't know anything about cars. That's the first thing I'm going to say. Because this car is made in Italy, in Turin, Italy, 100% from scratch. They take the steel, they make all of the parts of the frame, the chassis, the doors, and all that stuff. This particular edition, the Gran Lusso, is a Zegna edition, which the interior is done by Zegna, who makes these fine Italian suits. So the headliners, the door cards, the seat inserts are all silk and carbon fiber with aniline red and black leather. It's one of the most amazing interiors I've ever seen. So here at my local Neiman Marcus, they have a Zegna in store.
that offers some of their fabrics and suits. There's also a dedicated store over at the Aria Crystal Shops that we'll check out. But just walking in here, you can see these are very fine suits and materials. Wow. You can see in some of their books where they have, you can check some of the textiles. This looks a lot like the headliner material. This looks like the material used in the car. Pretty amazing. I think these suits are like $3 or $4 grand. Wow.
Now the engine you probably heard about famously is made by Ferrari in Modena. It's a Maserati engine that's manufactured at Ferrari. So it's not a Ferrari engine, it's an engine built by Ferrari, has some Ferrari parts, but it's designed and built for Maserati. And like I told you, I've seen these engines with 200, 300,000 miles. It's got a ZF or ZF transmission. Those don't fail, they last forever. Brembo brakes. These are some of the greatest brakes you could put on any car. I've had many cars that have these same Brembo brake systems, and they're just the best. So you got all these naysayers out there that go, oh, you know, I'm just going to buy a Toyota, I'm just going to buy this or that. Listen, I'm not going to dispute any of those things. Those are great cars. And not everybody's interested in having a car that has the, you know, lowest center of gravity with a 50-50 weight distribution that's all-wheel drive with a twin turbo, V6 with the optional V8 that has as much as, you know, over 600-700 horsepower. Not everybody wants an exciting interior like this. Not everybody wants to spend that much money. I get it. A lot of people are pretty dull and boring. They drive a 92 gold Corolla to Taco Bell and they live a pretty mundane life. I get it. Not everybody wants to be fun. However, there are some people that when they go to Costco to pick up their groceries, they want to do it in a Maserati. You know, Ferrari doesn't really make a true SUV. The closest thing they have is that FF Lusso hatchback. That thing's pretty cool. They did make it another attempt at an SUV, but the bottom line is people don't really want Ferrari to make an SUV, and I don't blame them. But this thing, it's styled, and I will admit it's a bit of a chick car. You know, I had a Lexus RX 350, which is probably one of the most reliable cars in the world. Got rid of that and got this. But it was just a grocery getter like this thing, and I wanted something a little bit more fun. You know, I normally daily drive that Rolls-Royce Phantom, and it's not something you want to take to Costco. It's not something you want to take to Walmart. Kind of sticks out. That's more for going out to dinner, picking up your friends at the airport. It's a lot of fun. I needed an everyday car that had cargo space, and check out the back of this thing. I just released a couple of videos before this one showing off the back of this thing, showing off some of the accessories. You have this optional mat that goes here. You have this that pops up, ingeniously held up here. I've added some things in here, you know, like this first aid and toolkit. Underneath here you have a full spare. Something I just added, which is in another video, are these rails that didn't come stock. You can order it with your Levante, but you have this little fence. This can be moved, adjusted diagonally even, has these little belts. Now this isn't anything that's proprietary to this car. You can get these for very many cars, but it's not something that you would probably find in, for instance, a Ferrari. But you are getting Ferrari type performance with this car. Let me tell you, after I drove this thing, I was blown away. Now, the coolest thing I've ever had that was similar to this was my Cadillac CTS-V wagon. I've actually had two of those. You can go back and look at some of my older videos on this channel and see the videos I did on those cars. Those cars, that was the fastest thing I've ever owned. That was really a true sports car. And it used to blow people's minds when I would blow their doors off. That car was capable of over 200 miles an hour, and I had it up to 187 in Mexico. And it had all of this cool storage where you could fold down the seats and you could fit it. But there's something cool about having the SUV because it gives you just a little bit more ability. Now, living here in Las Vegas, I don't think I would ever take this thing off-road, but if I wanted to, I could, because let me show you a couple of party tricks that this car can do.
Also, This little rig I put in here for going and getting the groceries, greatest thing ever. Must have. Watch the video that I put in about doing the rails, and this thing worth every penny.
All right, we're going to get into the amazing sound of this thing here in a minute, but first I'm going to start it up. Now, when you first start it up, you're going to get the full open sound of the pipes. This thing sounds fantastic. But I want to show you a little bit about how the suspension works. Now, you just saw it raise up. When you get out of the car, it's in its exit and entry position. I'm going to get in this thing. Let me roll this window down here, and let me turn off the radio. There we go. And, oh, I have to press the start button. There we go, just like a video game. Hold on. Now, let me get in this thing here. Okay. We are in normal mode. Normal mode gives you this ride height, average feeling suspension, and I could go into all the specifics, but basically it's driving in its normal mode. First mode I'm going to choose is called ICE, Increased Control and Efficiency. That will give you the normal ride height, but it will soften the suspension and soften and lengthen your shifts, and you want to get the best fuel mileage. This also has that start-stop engine feature. When you come to a stoplight, turns off the motor. I hate that. But you can't override it, and there's a button that you can press to turn that off. Now, watch what happens when I go into off-road mode. The suspension is going to rise up all the way. It's also going to tighten your shifts so that you're moving in a much lower RPM. You're in all-wheel drive mode, and on the screen it'll show you that you've got 50-50 power running to the front and the back as needed. And that's your off-road mode. So I have seen this thing do some legitimate off-road stuff, which is something I think I will probably never do. But if you really did, if you were in a situation where you had to go through mud, snow, up and over some rocks and hills, you can do that by simply pressing a button. But here's the button that everybody really likes. Sport. Now, I don't know if you can hear that through this microphone. We're going to go for a little ride here in a minute, and I'm going to take a microphone and set it back there so you can hear the pipes of this thing. It's going to lower down to sport mode. Sport mode, also known as I'm going to drink up all the gas in the tank mode, tightens up your shifts. Your steering gets much firmer. Your suspension is super tight. It's keeping you in the higher RPM rev as you're driving through this thing. And it really is a true sports car. When you've got this thing in sports mode, I mean, it's a Ferrari. It really is. I've driven some pretty cool sports cars. We had a Ferrari 458 Spider that I got to enjoy for a couple of weeks. And I can tell you, this thing isn't crazy different than one of those cars in this mode. It's pretty cool. Okay, I've got this crazy idea. Hopefully this sounds okay. I have two microphones, and I've got one here so I could speak to you. I took the other one and I put it in the trunk. Why? Because I want you to hear this. Because the sound that's inside the car, when I put it into sport mode, is just... It's great. Oh, it's fantastic. It's just a sound that only comes from this kind of a car. Whoa. Right? Now, I wasn't even really going that fast. I just had it like in first and second gear. But let me tell you, you can get really hammering down on this thing and really rolling, and it'll pop, it'll gurgle, it'll make some noise. And it's just a sound that only a sports car with an engine made by Ferrari. Now, I know it doesn't have the same flat playing clearing that is in some of the other hot rods, things like that. It doesn't have the paddle shifters. This is not the Trofeo edition, which is the V8 edition. This has only got 350 horsepower, and quite frankly, I don't see why you would need the big one. I mean, that would be great and all, that'd be fun, but I don't really think it's necessary. It's a whole lot more money, first of all. And if you really, really need that, I think for the 125 or 150 grand or whatever it costs to get that, I think it's a good value. Yeah. Now, even though it doesn't have the paddle shifters, you do have your manual control here. Now, of course, I'm in just regular old traffic, so I can't really get crazy with it. But here's the crazy thing about it. You just you look down here, you turn off sport mode, and then you're back in grandma mode. Grandma's back in town, folks. It's quiet, it's soft, it's getting great gas mileage. Okay, not great gas mileage. It's getting better gas mileage. But now it's just your regular everyday car. You're going to soccer practice with the kids. You're going to Costco. No big deal. But when you drop off the kids, yeah. All right, let's take a look at the inside of this thing. We got the sun beaming down on it. Let's address some of this parts bin BS. Start with the window switches. Now, mine have been all carbon fibered out. Apparently, this just isn't good enough for some of the car reviewers. They need some kind of really special switches, apparently. I don't see the problem here. I really don't. What I'm really more impressed with is all the nice stitching here, the leather, this metal trim, the Zegna silk interior, the leather, the carbon hardened stereo system. I need to clean this because I've been driving the crap out of it. But look at the interior of this thing, and I've got my shadow in the way, so I'm trying to open this up and kind of give you. When I first saw this, I was just like, my God, this is beautiful. The wood. This is metal. Okay, here we go with the window switch again. Who cares? To me, this looks cool. I don't know. But this interior is just fantastic. This thing is fantastic. These seat inserts. Now, again, this is a special edition, the Zegna edition, but these are silk. I think they said like carbon fiber stitching or something. I don't know, but the leather is really good. This is a natural wood. Now, I added this little. This will be in a different video maybe, but this is a little stand I put in here for my phone. That wouldn't normally be here. You would open this up, and then there's your cup holders, and of course I've got myself a little charger in there. And then this opens up and slides back, and again I've got my little cord in there for my Apple CarPlay. And really, I think I would like it if manufacturers would stop doing this, because no one drives around with this closed. We've always got a drink. We've always got our phone charged in. Just saying. Now, I got a bunch of crap in here, obviously. I keep things in here, but there's been a lot of people show these off, and there's actually a little vent in there that will cool whatever's in there, unless, of course, you have, this one doesn't have the individual rear controls. Back here, you just have the vents, and then you have this little port that opens up. Again, you don't need to cover that. You're always going to have a phone plugged in. You just are. But on the other edition that would have the controls here, you have a much shallower opening. But there is a lot of space here. Plenty of reviewers have shown all the space and headroom, and like I'm 6'2", 220 pounds. I mean, you can get back here, and there's plenty of room for you to sit. Now, I bought that little tissue holder. I put that in there. Let's take a moment to admire the amount of effort and work that was put into these pedals and the dead pedal. Stainless steel. Check out that panel on the right, just to protect the carpet from your foot pressing on it. They don't want your fine Italian Prada shoes scratching up the interior, so they put those panels in there to protect. I just thought it was cool. I added this red button. This red button doesn't go there. I put that in. Let's address some of the other parts bin accusations here. Apparently, there's some people out there who just seem to have a real effing problem with this turn signal because it's shared with other Dodges and Chryslers. So sorry you were offended. But guess what? It works. And it's familiar to my other cars. Just like when I jump over there and I drive that Ram, it's familiar to me, okay? And I don't have a problem with that. Same goes with the steering wheel. The steering wheel is fantastic. You've got some basic, easy-to-use buttons. On the back are the same radio buttons that's on that Ram over there. And just like a Charger and a Chrysler. I really just don't see the problem with that. Same thing with this cluster here. This cluster, I think, looks fantastic. You have all sorts of things. And like I said, there's plenty of reviews that have been around for 5 years now to show you. Let me turn ice mode off. We're going to go into normal mode. But, you know, there's plenty of reviewers out there that's gone through all of this different stuff. And they complained about this and that. But it works, and it works really well. And I'm going to show you a couple of things on my car that I think is fine. All right, let's have a look. Let's compare. I mean, I guess they're kind of the same. They're not exactly the same, but they're similar. This doesn't seem I mean, I don't know. It's a turn signal, I guess. So that's my Ram truck. And quite frankly, this thing is, the interior of this thing is amazing. Stellantis doing some great work. I mean, this is an expensive truck. It's really nice. So many of these reviewers are like, I think at this price point for this much money, you should have better window switches. All right, let's look at some better window switches. Sitting here in the shop is my Rolls-Royce Phantom. This has better window switches. Yeah, they're like chrome, they're metal, they're polished, whatever. Oh wow, look, the turn signal. Oh, how nice. So, you know, for $500,000, you can go get a nice leather wrapped, car, and then you can get some better window switches. But, you know, for under $500,000, you might have to settle for those plastic ones. The reason I'm harping on this is because this car came out 5 years ago. And I watched every single review that I could find about the Maserati Levante. And every single one of them had to make a point to talk about the 3 or 4 little parts on there that are shared with Ram, Dodge, Chrysler, and all the other things that are part of, the Fiat Chrysler and then the Stellantis group. Now, I want to go into more detail for those of you that are going to stick around, the people that are really interested in one of these cars, that's considering buying one. I'm going to explain to you which versions of this car you should buy if you're going to buy one, and why I think you should. Let's hop in though. I put this nice little leather key cover on the key, but we'll go ahead and open it, unlock, and I want to show you the basic startup experience. Like I said, I put this little red button in here. When you start the car, you get this nice little Maserati logo. You get one here as well. Now, every single time, this is kind of a pain in the ass, you have to press accept. That's kind of annoying, I have to admit. But what I've also done is I've added the start, stop, off button here. So I just instinctively now, when I jump in the car, I press both. Now, you can change these buttons down here. When you go into this Maserati home logo, I've seen a lot of reviewers falsely say that you can rearrange these. You can't. They're done alphabetically. A, B, C, D, D. See, they're alphabetical. But what you can do is you can drag them down to this bar and you can choose which of the 6 you're going to have here. So I've chosen my phone control because I don't want the phone to automatically connect. I've got my navigation, climate, radio. I want to check out my surround camera when I need that. And then the start, stop, off. It's just become second nature after you have the car for a little while. Now you do have these climate controls, which are shared between some different platforms. I think you'll see these in the Alfa Romeos, you'll see them in other cars. But to me, having things that are a lot the same is great. You have, each person can control their up and down, but you can go into the climate. And then the thing is people complain that, oh, you have to go into the climate control. Look how many things there are to choose in here. heated steering wheel, vented seat, heated seat, recirculation, defrosters, auto, the synchronization or individual controls. There's a lot of stuff. How many buttons are you going to have? It's not that big a deal to go into this little climate control to go in there. I like having the basic Uconnect stuff the same that's on my truck. You know, you have TravelLink, SiriusXM, you can check for fuel prices and things. And I like that this is the same that's on my truck. Even though they're completely different brands, it's familiar to me. So I don't have a problem with it. I think it all works great. It seems to happen pretty quickly, and it's fine. Second thing I've seen, or another thing I should say I've seen people complain about, is this shifter. I don't see why there's a problem. There's a little trigger on the back here, a little trigger. Now, if you just move this, nothing happens. You have to have your foot on the brake and pull the trigger to move into reverse. Same with drive. Now, if I'm in drive, for instance, I just went to the car wash and washed the car beforehand, you have to drive up onto the rails, and then you just beep, now you're in neutral. And then you can, when you're in drive, you can flip it over like this, and you can shift your gears if you don't have the paddle shifters, which is what you're going to have in the regular V6. And then when you want to park, you just press this park button. As with all luxury vehicles, you've got a clock. It's a nice little clock. It's a standard clock. The new Grecale has a digital version of this. That's fine. So as I talked about, this interior is the Gran Lusso. This is the Zegna edition. If you go to the mall here in Vegas, over to Aria, you can buy a suit made by these people for about $5,000. But it's a really nice rig. Now, all these other reviewers, they'll tell you, you've got just little quirks. Like if you press this to open the sunroof, it'll open part of the way. And then you press it again, it'll open the rest of the way. I don't know. That's not a big deal to me. Some people complained about that. I don't mind. This one tilts it up, then that closes it. This will close the cover, which I haven't been keeping closed, which I normally would in the hot part of the summer. But the glass is nicely tinted, so it's fine. But yeah, this is the same, where it's, I really like that. See, you can choose. And the reason it's like that is maybe the people in the back don't want that open. So fine. Some of the controls here, this is a volume. People keep calling this a cake. This is a volume and this is a selector. It's kind of cool because you can turn that lower thing and you can select the thing you're looking for. Let me turn the volume down. There you go. You can, that's fine. That way you don't have to touch anything. You can hit this for back menu. So like for instance, if I'm in the radio mode, I can scroll through different channels, things like that. Fine, great, it's no problem. I like it. Being that I have that Rolls-Royce Phantom, it has sort of the iDrive dial in there, so I'm kind of used to it. Here are your drive modes. And then this is a electronic parking brake. And then this will let you control up and down. So your suspension, if you feel like you just want to manually raise it up, you can hit that button and it will, it'll raise itself up. And there you go. And you go into off-road mode. Well, you can turn that off and it'll lower back down. But you can manually control it, and it works pretty well, and pretty quickly, I should say. This little button here with the little shock absorber on it, that's for stiffening up your shocks. So if you're in whatever situation, you can hit that and it adds some extra firmness.
Real quick, I wanted to talk about these doors. Notice this is a frameless window and this is double glazing, meaning there are two pieces of glass that are glued together. This helps with the sound deadening. It's both on the front and the rear. And I have this on my Rolls-Royce car, and a lot of cars are doing this now, but they call it double glazing, where you have two sheets of glass that are sealed together. And I believe the rears are tinted. I'm not sure if the fronts come that way because they're slightly different colors. Notice they're also soft close, so when you get the door to just right there, it will finish closing. And then it will roll the window up and seal itself up under there. So watch what happens. Close the door. It will pull itself in, and then that window goes up. So there's a bit of a sensor back here. When you pull on the door, it knows when you touch it, right? And it will pull that window down. See? Right? So if you could see what's happening here. I'm just pointing this out for people that need to know how to operate the door. You pull it a little, the window comes down, and then you pull it the rest of the way, the door opens. You want to try to do it in that two-stage pattern. And I like to just do the door like that, but try not to let it slam, let it pull itself in. This button is for locking the door. So if the key fob is close, I don't know if you can even see there, but that locks the door. And then as long as the key fob is in your pocket, easy entrance, you pull this, unlocks, opens. So you can do it in a two-stage or one-stage thing. It is mechanical. It's a mechanical door release, but this little sensor in here, it's like a capacitive sensor, notices and it rolls this window down. This is an issue if your battery is dead, because you'd have to pull the door open, and this is gonna, it could damage it, honestly. I don't know if it would. It would probably pull out from under there, but this window rolls up and down. That, you know, that car over there does the same thing. It's kind of annoying because it doesn't actually have doorknobs. Anyway, I just wanted to point that out to you. I thought it was a cool feature, and I just wanted to, I recorded this later and I had to insert it in because I had forgot to mention it. There was just a few little party tricks about the car that I thought were interesting. It's just a higher level of trim, you know, this double glazing in the glass, and it just helps with the soundproofing, and it's one of the things that makes it a premium car versus a lesser car.
Let's take a look at this engine. Now, I recently detailed this thing because I washed it. Let's pull this engine cover off, which is super cool. Set it aside here, just so you can take a look at this thing. Now again, I detailed it. There's a spray that I use, Back on Black. Chemical Guys makes it, and I always keep all my plastics all shiny and everything. Keep the motor pretty. But take a look at this gorgeous engine. Now that is a thing of beauty. Now this is the V6 version. If you get the V8, they do all that crinkle powder coated red like you find on the Ferraris. Just wondering if you could see this, if you can read this here. Trying to show it to you. I don't know if it'll focus on it, but if you can see what it says. It says Ferrari, Ferrari. So yeah, you might have a little mix of other Stellantis parts in here, maybe a little Mopar or something, but as far as I could tell, this is all Ferrari stuff. I will admit, that's probably going to be expensive if something needs to be fixed, but you've got an all chain drive system here. These plugs and cold packs are going to be super easy to do. And from what I've heard from people, the only real problems that these have had are the air conditioning compressors. The electronic clutch way down there will fail, and the air compressor will fail on your air conditioner. You got to take this wheel off and this wheel cover to get to it if you're going to do it yourself. It's about a $1,000 repair. But you know, every car is going to have some kind of a thing that it's going to need. I don't think that's that big a deal, honestly. Considering the fact that, like, for instance, I had to do quite a bit of maintenance on this truck, you know. I put about $10,000 worth of Banks power accessories on that truck. Every car is going to have something, but from what I've heard about these cars, they seem to be incredibly robust, and they just seem to be doing fine. There's a couple of great videos I recommend that you watch if you really want to know more about these. The SUV Super Build series, they did an hour-long documentary about this car, showing it being completely manufactured in Italy by Maserati. Maserati is one of the oldest car brands in the world. They're like 100 years old, and they've been building race cars and they've been building amazing cars for a really long time, but they've always been a boutique builder. They've only made a few thousand cars a year, and when they're hand building cars like this, they're going to be quirky. That's just how these kind of cars are. But with Stellantis now being their parent company, their goal is to sell maybe, I don't know, 50,000 cars a year. I think they're doing something like 20,000 of these a year. Still, that's pretty low numbers. But they're making these things not only by robots, but by hand in Italy, by people who have worked at Maserati generationally. Their father works there. Their mother might have worked there. Their son works there. And there's a type of pride that goes into the really cool Italian stuff, whether it's Italian shoes, Italian suits, Italian cars. They just have a pride that they put into things because it represents their family, their culture, their people, their country. And I really appreciate that. And I really like the flashiness that this car is. I mean, if you've watched my channel and you've seen the clothes I wear and the things I do, this thing fits me. I'm really happy I bought it. So let's say you're sold and you too want to go out and get a Maserati. So here are my recommendations, because I did a lot of research before I plunked down the money. Now, I paid a premium for this car. I paid about $38,000 for this car. Has 42,000 miles on it. It's a 2019, it's now 5 years old. I paid much less than half of its original $85,000 list price. Massively depreciated. That means that whoever bought this car lost their ass when they traded it in. But the reason I paid a premium for this car is because this car was sold to somebody in Arizona, where it was kept in Scottsdale, kept inside. They had actually wrapped the car red, which I wish they had left it that way. And they had always maintained it at the Ferrari there at Scottsdale. And I have all of the records where this thing was meticulously maintained. Once they traded it in, it was unwrapped, and then they PPF'd the whole thing, which it's covered in this nice protective film on the front and the rear. And it just had immaculate records, not a scratch on it. The top trim level Gran Lusso that I wanted. I like the wheels, I like the brakes. It was in a great condition. So I paid a premium. I ended up paying like $38 plus tax. The taxes here are really high in Nevada. So it was $42,500 I paid cash out the door. I own the car. Done. I think that if you buy one of these new, not a good purchase. The only advantage to doing that is you get to spec it out exactly how you want. But you're going to lose so much money so quickly. If you want to buy one of these, you buy one used, in my opinion, and you don't have a lot to pick from. But here's the important thing I want you to remember. The very first year, the 2017, you're going to find those really cheap, like $20,000, $25,000. And the reason is that one particular year, they had hydraulic steering. It didn't have the adaptive cruise control and the lane assist. It didn't have a lot of different features, had a little bit more quirks and problems, and that's why you'll find those cars much cheaper. Now, I have seen those cars for sale that had, like I said, over 200,000 miles on them. They're still good cars, they just don't have the tech. So if none of the technology matters to you and you don't mind that you might have to put a little money into it, wow, you can get one of those cars for half the price. In my opinion, if you were going to buy one and can afford to spend the money, I would go for probably the 2021. That one's going to have the newer, updated interior, the electronics, the ability to use the phone app to start the car and other things like that. But you're going to pay a much higher premium. You may pay $50,000 or more for one of those cars, clearly. This one being a 2019, it has everything I need on it. The car is like new, and actually the body style doesn't really change much. The 2021 had a slightly different change in the bumper and things, a little bit of a change of the taillights. But when they're building a boutique car like this, they're not going to change the entire body style that often. They're going to stick with it for a while. That's why I like that Rolls-Royce Phantom. If I didn't tell you what year it is, you'd have a hard time figuring it out unless you really know those cars. That's an advantage to these because they'll hold their styling for a long time and people won't know how old your car is. Nobody knows that this car is 5 years old. People think it's a brand spanking new car, and it's really about how it's taken care of. I'm not going to hot dog it like you saw me do earlier. I'm going to drive this thing pretty grandma. Here in Las Vegas, you really can't drive that fast, and the whole city is only 25 miles wide anyway, so there's not far you can go. So I probably only put 5,000 miles a year on the car. So if I keep this thing a couple of years, I'm probably maybe going to put 15 or 20,000 miles on this car before I'm ready for a new one. But I can say for sure that I'm a Maserati fan, and I'm going to probably own a Maserati moving forward. Now keep in mind, you're looking at some things on this car like the red badging. I put the red badging on the car when it was wrapped red and then unwrapped. They had debadged the car, and I added all those badges on. I added a few little flavors and things that were my own. That stuff was pretty cheap. I mean, you can buy those badges for a few bucks. I wanted to do this video because there was so much misinformation out there about Maserati, the brand. But there were some trusted sources from people that I know have one of these. My good friend Car Wizard, his wife, Mrs. Wizard, has one of these cars, and they put quite a few miles on it. And they've been very happy with it, driving it in Wichita, Kansas, where they have to encounter snow and bad weather and mud and rocks and things. And they've had nothing but good things to say about the car. And I trust his advice. My good friend Tyler Hoover from Hoovy's Garage, he had one that he had bought called the Maserati, and that's a whole other series you could go watch. He had that car, I think it had over 100,000 miles and hadn't had the oil changed in 30,000 miles. They did a service on it car ran fine. And he admits that he misses the car. He wishes he'd have kept it. And then, my buddy John Ross, watch Jared Go. He did a review. Now, John Ross, I'm busting your chops right now. This whole parts bin thing, I know it's clickbait, and you'll tell me the car's great, okay? And you know it is, and you have a Gran Turismo. But the Gran Turismo suffers from what? The sticky buttons and the bad layout. Well, Stellantis fixed all that. When they put in the puff, they fixed all those problems and all those issues and made this a totally reliable everyday car. This car, with the way it's set up, is complete. I have no problem. I would jump in this car and drive it anywhere. And I know that it's going to last me well over 100,000 miles without any problems. Is it going to be as reliable as like a Lexus or something like that? I can't say that it would be. Of course, you can't beat a Toyota or whatever, but that's not really comparing apples to oranges. This thing is, it's a Ferrari. I mean, kind of, sort of. Like, there's people out there that are going to say, no, it isn't. Well, I mean, did you hear that thing? Have you ridden in one of these? I mean, I've had Ferraris. They're pretty cool. But this is a car that you can drive to the mall. You can drive every day. So, you know what you do? You go get your other cool cars, and then you have this for your everyday stuff. Listen, I love fun cars. Porsches, Ferraris, Lamborghinis, things like that. But none of these cars, in any of their forms, are very practical. This isn't something that you really want to drive every day. It's really a total pain in the ass to drive any of these cars. They're completely unreliable. I don't know if I'd say that they're unreliable, but because this car actually will start up every time. But it's not something you want to take to the store. You need something that you can really drive. So what's the best balance there to find something that is an everyday car that you could let your wife drive if she's not used to driving a crazy car like this, and something that you can use for everyday use but is still fun at the touch of a button? The answer is Maserati. Now, I can hear some of you saying, and I agree with you, hey, all of these SUVs look exactly alike. You're right. The backs of the side profiles of some of these cars, I can hardly tell this thing from a Mazda, from a BMW, from a Mercedes, from a Lexus. They all look alike. This particular one has been dolled up a little bit. This wing has been added. The lower splitter has been added and a few other things. But anyway, at the end of the line, they're trying to compete with the BMWs, the Mercedes, the Porsches, those other kind of higher end SUVs. And there's a lot of great ones out there, and they all have something unique to offer. I think what makes this one slightly different is, kind of maybe the price point. I mean, this car is $85,000 new. That's a lot of money. But I think the performance and the fun that you get out of it, and quite frankly, I got to say, I like some of those other cars, but just this interior. This isn't everybody's bag. Not everybody's into this whole unique interior thing. They have a lot of different layouts, but there's something about the way the Italians do certain things. I mean, the shoes that I like to wear, these are Prada. I like Christian Louboutin. I like the Dolce & Gabbana. Even though some of those are French brands, they still have their stuff made in Italy. I love Versace and Fendi, and I'm not bragging. I'm not trying to name drop these brands. This is stuff that I like. I'm not necessarily loyal to any particular one of those brands, and I don't buy them because they have the name brand plastered on them. It's because I like a certain type of aesthetic, which I'm sure you figured out by now. And when I saw this car, I'm obviously not the only one, because some designers got together and said, it would be a great car. It's just every time I see it, every time I get in it, it just makes me happy, and I guess that's all that really matters. So listen, if this isn't your thing, if you're more of a conservative, this isn't for you. I recommend any Toyota product. Lexus makes a really great one. Toyota, there's a lot of great cars out there. For me, I don't think I would ever buy one of the Hyundais or Kias, even though I think they're making some pretty cool looking cars. It's just not for me. It's a different level. However, I will make this suggestion. Check this out. I know my videos run a little long, but I want to take you on a little field trip. I want to turn you on to something. The Dodge Hornet, also made by Stellantis, inspired by the Alfa Romeo. I think you're going to be pretty impressed when you see this car and the price point. For like 40 grand, for let's just say half of less than half of what you could buy one of these. You get something that's very close. Doesn't have the same level of interior, doesn't have the same level of the suspension and all that other. You're getting half the car, but it's a great value and it's along this vibe. So if you don't have the kind of money to get something like this, either first hand or second hand, these new Dodge Hornets that are made entirely in Italy, I think you should check them out. Let's go see one, and I think you'll understand why I think it's so cool. So just real quick, we're gonna check out the new Dodge Hornets, right? So these are based off of the Alphas. Now I think it's like a Dodge Dart that's been made bigger. And the Dart was really like a Fiat Arba. So it's all part of the family. And I'm just showing you these as an example of the shared Stellantis stuff that's being used on the Maseratis and the Alphas. Basically, this thing's $42,000. For the price of this thing, you can get this brand new for what I paid for a 5-year-old Maserati with 40,000 miles on it. Just as an example. Not quite the same level of car though. Let's take a look inside though and see how far off it is. We're coming inside here a little bit. They've changed the door switches. I like the way this door panel's put together. Red leather, perfed. Red stitching. Make a little video of the inside of this thing so I can look at it. I like, okay, so very similar layout on this lower section to the Alphas and the Maserati. Same kind of thing. Okay. I've never seen before a volume scroller wheel. That's interesting. I like the stitching. This is a formed ABS plastic dash, but you got some soft leather here. This is not sure what kind of a leather this is, but it's nice. Let's check out the back. Okay. This is all plastic. Plastic. A lot shorter wheelbase, leg space back here. Interesting. Much smaller space back here. So these are made in Italy. That's interesting. Here we are importing a Dodge from Italy. Small little motor, transverse. Is this a front-wheel drive?
This one will be front-wheel drive.
Or is it all-wheel drive?
All-wheel drive.
So it's all-wheel drive, I guess. Small little turbo though. A tiny turbo, it's so cute. So just like all their other products, you got 360 camera, lane keep assist with the LiDAR-based adaptive cruise. A lot of options, all the same kind of options that you have, like on the Maserati and the Alpha. Way cheaper price point. You can kind of get the kind of feel of one of those cars for 40 grand. And this car, when it hits the secondary market, is going to be way cheaper than that. And this is a fairly highly optioned GT Gran Turismo. Pretty good value, I think. All right, guys, well, that's my review of the 2019 Maserati Levante Gran Lusso edition. Of course, I'm a little biased because I bought the car. Everybody wants to justify their decisions. But I feel like I've owned enough cars as a custom car builder and as a mechanic that I feel like I know that I made a good decision, and I'm happy with the car that I bought. I like the color scheme. I like the design. I like the Brembo brakes. I like the suspension. Obviously, I love the interior. Happy with the engine. Happy with the sound. And I'm just happy with the car. I really am. You're going to see other people in the comment section with their opinions, and they're going to say why it's a bad deal. But the bottom line is, just don't buy a new one. Yes, they massively depreciate, and they do it for really unfair reasons. The car gets a bad rap. And maybe I could just say, hey, since the Stellantis merger taken over from where, you know, Ferrari owned them for a while, Fiat Chrysler had them, and now you have the Stellantis merger. Maybe that just gave them the boost that they needed. It gave them the equipment that they needed. It gave them the money and the parts. It gave them the things that they needed to make this car much, much better. If you can't afford this, you've got your other options. Alfa Romeos make some pretty cool cars like the Stelvio. And then of course you have that new Dodge Hornet that I just showed you. So you got a lot of options if you're interested in a car like this. It's not for everybody, but it was for me. And you're gonna see a lot more content about this thing as things go along. Now, if this is your first time watching this channel and your first time watching a video about the Maserati Levante, there are a lot of great videos I can recommend. I've done several videos of some upgrades and things that I've done on this car that you might like. And also, keep in mind that when you're watching some of these older reviews, you're watching a guy who's only had the car for an hour. I've been driving this thing for over a month and put a couple thousand miles on it. I feel like I know this car a little bit better. I'll check back with you after a year or two. Listen, if this thing goes to crap, I'll make sure and tell you. But so far, from what I can tell, and also being a part of the Maserati owners group that has over 20,000 members in it, I just haven't seen any major complaints about it. Everybody just raves about it. They love it. So go check one out. Go drive one. I recommend it. So if you like this kind of content, you know what to do. You like, you share, you subscribe. And I'll be back to the other stuff I do. If this is your first time watching, we work on the DeLorean Time Machine, Back to the Future. We do Ghostbusters, Knight Rider, and of course all these other cars, Rolls Royces, and all kinds of fun things. So it's a lot of fun channel, and I hope to see more of you soon. I hope to see more of you seeing me soon. I'm Videobob. Thanks for watching.